King Kong is one of the greatest films to come out of the 1930s. It came out in 1933. It was produced and directed by Merian C. Cooper and Ernest B. Schoedsack, with iconic special effects from Willis H. O'Brien. It is an unbelievable time at the movies, and we're covering today on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. My name is Harry Bailey, and I am joined by my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney. Shane, how are you on this fine Monday of recording?
Yeah, I'm very, very good. Excited to get into this absolute trip of a movie. It's I'd never seen. I know you had, but it's definitely what I wanted to take off for a long time, and it didn't disappoint. Let me just say that it did not disappoint.
Oh, so good. It's very similar, for those of you who have seen it. It is very similar to the 2005 remake from Peter Jackson, and for good reason. This film is phenomenal. The template it's set for future King Kong iterations is borderline perfect. From Skull Island right up until New York, it is sensational. I absolutely love this movie. Spoiler alert. And I'm absolutely delighted we are covering it on We Are Under Attack, our new arc on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. We are covering 5 films in which we are very much under attack. Although this week we are talking about someone or something that is attacking us who we very much do feel sorry for. Not a recurring theme this month, I don't think. The other films we will be covering, in case you are wondering, is The War of the Worlds, Godzilla, The Birds, and The Night of the Living Dead. But yes, first and foremost, back to the 1930s, a decade we haven't covered in quite a while, it feels like. A decade that I love in cinema. As you said, is your first time covering King Kong. What stood out to you first time seeing this masterpiece?
Yeah, I think at the very start when I first saw the Kong special effects, I did kind of laugh a little bit at how unrefined, shall I say, that they were. But very quickly, I went from being like, "Is that it?" to being like, "Oh, this is actually so great." There's something so charming about how,
Yeah.
look, and obviously, like they were working with a lot of restraints. You know, like when it comes to like nowadays, what they can do obviously with special effects and visual effects is obviously way more advanced than what they do back then. So I think they made the best of a more difficult situation, and by the end, I was just so enamored with Kong. Like it's it looks so kind of crap, but also so good at the same time. You just completely buy into the fact that you do have to kind of switch your brain off a little bit. But like especially when he's scaling those big buildings in New York, and he's fighting with the other kind of big lizards and stuff like that. It's just quite charming. The whole thing is quite charming. I know you're supposed to think that it's like, oh, it's a big beast. He's a brew, and yeah, he is. But it's also like it's kind of charming just seeing how unrefined it was, and I had a great time with it. I did.
Yeah, so they used rear projection, miniatures, they used stop motion animation to put this together. It looks like it's from the 1930s. But that being said, the pacing of this film, the action, everything that happens in this film is timeless. The effects are very charming. It was also brought to us by a returning David O. Selznick. We have not said that name for a long time on the podcast. And the idea came around when producer Merian C. Cooper just thought of the idea of a giant gorilla on the Empire State Building fighting off airplanes. And then he thought, we should try and make a movie about that. Hence, King Kong. Not that strange to me, but for some reason, it's strange that this didn't come from a book. Like so many movies that we cover on the podcast are book adaptations. It's surprising to me that this wasn't one of them. This feels like a late 19th century novel that would have just blown people's minds, or like an early 20th century novel that would have just blown people's minds. But no, Marion C. Cooper just thought, huh, wouldn't it be funny if a giant gorilla fought a lot of airplanes? And God was he right, because this is amazing. The film stars Faye Ray as Anne Darrow, the only prominent woman in this film, which is quite funny because Bruce Cabot plays Jack Driscoll, who works on the boat, who very openly hates women. Everyone on this boat very openly hates women. It's such a 1930s subplot of this film. One of the funniest things, because this is a funny movie, one of the funniest things in this film is Anne and Jack spring up a relationship over time. And he says,
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
well, I guess I love you. And her response is, but Jack, you hate women. And his response to that is, I know, but you're different. Which is
It's so crazy.
so 1930s. So unbelievably 1930s. And last but not least, Robert Armstrong plays Carl Denham, the reason that this big old monkey leaves Skull Island and ends up in New York. Very much the Jack Black role, as far as I can remember. I haven't actually seen the Peter Jackson film in years, but he certainly has the line that Jack Black gets at the end. But yeah, Carl Denham is a fascinating character. Kind of funny as well because one of the directors of this, Ernest B. Schoedsack, actually did direct like 2 movies in a row with like monkeys in them before this. So it's just funny that the character of Carl Denham is this like globe-trotting film director who's famous for shooting animals, as in like filming them, but he does shoot some dinosaurs in this film. But yeah, they are the 3 sort of main characters in this film. They are fine for me. This is all about Kong, and this is all about the world building. Skull Island is so cool, unbelievable. Shout out to the set designers, shout out to the costume designers. Skull Island is unbelievable. It feels timeless. Like, it is unbelievable. They reached this, I would assume, uncontacted tribe on Skull Island, who are in the middle of sacrificing a woman to Kong, which is clearly like a ritual that they have. And oh my god, the costume design, the set design, everything is like off the charts. It is amazing. These giant gates, they're basically the gateway to fucking hell as far as they're concerned, are behind them. It's what separates their village from Kong and the dinosaurs and everything. And every once in a while, they obviously open the gates, send a woman out there where they are like strapped to these 2 big pillars on this big platform, which just looks amazing, where Kong eventually comes and snatches them away. But when they meet Anne, whenever the film crew arrive, she's blonde, which someone remarks, well, they obviously don't get too many blondes on this island, because all of a sudden they are so enamored by her and want to sacrifice her to Kong. Maybe because she looks different to all the women on the island, and maybe they're trying to see what would happen in that case, but they call her a golden woman. But yeah, everything on Skull Island is fantastic, especially when they first reach it. I just find it so amazing. And as well, the score is amazing. It's one of the first films to have like a full-blown score for the entire runtime dedicated to it, which was one of the main things that audiences back then were taking from it as well. It was one of the main compliments that this film got back then was the score. And yeah, it's fantastic. But when they first get to Skull Island, it's amazing. Shane, how was your first venture to 1930s Skull Island?
Yeah, everything about it. So there's a guy there's one of the kind of tour guides, if you want to call him that. He's the only guy who kind of seems to at least partially understand the local language, and like local customs and stuff. So obviously they did that as a way to obviously like have at least a little bit of interaction between the local tribe and obviously the intruders as they are. But yeah, no, I was about to say about the score. The score just sets the tone. The score just sets the tone and sets the whole atmosphere so well. Like you said, they're doing this ritual for this young girl who they're going to essentially give to Kong as a kind of gift or as a peace offering or whatever kind of twisted thing it is. Maybe just as a way for Kong not to kind of interfere with their daily lives, as it were. But yeah, that the actual drums and the whole atmosphere that it just evokes is so great. And then obviously once we get the whole situation with Anne, they got back on the boat, and then the local tribe then steal Anne from that boat, and then obviously they go looking for Anne, and then just the whole reveal of Kong. So yeah, he's when you actually meet him for the first time, you actually see the eyes, and then you see him rise up, and it is an incredible cinematic moment. Like, it is the kind of moment that,
Imagine seeing this back then.
yeah, 100%. Like, if you were in the cinema back then, this would have been an amazing thing to witness. Like, stop motion, kind of corny stop motion animation. Even with that being said, it just it overcomes like any kind of cheesiness or corniness because of how it actually makes you feel. That kind of the kind of animalistic thing that it makes you feel inside, where it's like, oh, that's like a 100-foot gorilla, and he could wreck shit if he wanted to. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, on Skull Island as well, we get a lot of action sequences because eventually Kong takes on and goes off, and Jack and the rest of the lads have to go after him, and they encounter all sorts of dinosaurs, and yeah, all sorts of mayhem ensues. The Stegosaurus scene is probably the weakest of Skull Island for me because it's so drawn out and it's so clearly rear projection. But after that, everything is like phenomenal. I love it. The what almost appears to be like a Loch Ness monster type creature.
Yeah.
That scene is unbelievable where it rises out. They build a raft, it rises out behind the raft, goes back under, and then all of a sudden the raft just gets sent flying, and you can see that this giant creature is just eating whichever crew members. And it's great as well because they say early on in the film, God, they've so many crew members for such a small ship. Whatever about the plot reason, the real reason is so that they can all just die on Skull Island, and it's great. Like, send in more crew members for these lizards and monkeys to just tear apart.
I thought it was interesting though. They actually do like a reasonably decent job of explaining why there's so many crew members. Like, I think they all think that they're off for one reason, but really Denham knows that they're going into kind of the heart of the den of a gorilla, as it were. I don't know the exact phrase, but like I think Denham has a feeling that something bad can go down, so he essentially wants as much manpower to kind of counteract that as possible. But he's obviously not telling them that, because if he said to them, listen, I'm going to try and find this King Kong, I'm going to try and find this almost mythological creature that like can literally kill us in one single swift motion, like 90% of them would say, nah, fuck that, I'm not going. So
there's a great scene that sets that up as well, where he's doing practice shots with his camera of Anne on the way there.
Yeah.
And Jack and the skipper are watching, and Jack says, do you think he's crazy, skipper? And the skipper says, no, he's just enthusiastic. And then we cut back to him, and he's telling her to look as terrified as humanly possible, and to look up, not to look straight, but to look up. And then they cut back to them, and Jack says, Jesus, what does he think she's really going to see? And it's just like such a foreboding small sequence on the way to Skull Island that's amazing. But yeah, they just get massacred on this island, whether it's a giant sea lizard or pterodactyls or a T-Rex or whatever. They just get mauled. But their crew eventually make it to Kong, and oh my God, Kong flings it out of him off a cliff. And what is amazing is the use of miniatures and the use of dummies. You are literally watching these bodies fall from the cliff and just plummet and hit the floor so hard. And it's like, whoa, like if you were watching this in the 30s, that would have terrified you, I would have said. Because, yeah, the effects are like unlike things that they've seen before, 100%. The only thing I can think of around that time was obviously Renfeld's death in the Spanish version of Dracula, where he picks him up and he throws him down the stairs. Instead of him like tumbling down the stairs, in the Spanish one, he picks him up and throws him and he just plummets down the staircase. That's the only thing I can think of. But I'm sure Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein had some similar falling effects too. But actually, this is pre-Bride of Frankenstein, I think. Yeah, it is.
It is.
But yeah, the effects are amazing for its time, especially just these lads falling off this cliff, and Jack is hiding. He's managed to like find like a small cave where King Kong can't reach him, but Kong dispatches of all the other crew members, and then we get the mandatory King Kong versus T-Rex fight scene, which they made by two members of the crew, basically acted out what it would be like if a giant gorilla and a T-Rex had a fight, and then they modeled the actual miniatures and the stop motion figures, so to speak, around their fight, because there's some like really like actual like genuine maneuvers and stuff. Like at one point, Kong tries to get onto the back. Like there's actual strategy involved between this fight between the T-Rex and King Kong, which is just interesting. King Kong like tries to get its back and tries to get it in its sleeper hold. The T-Rex is using its tail to try and fight Kong. Eventually, Kong gets it in a headlock and wrestles it to the ground, and then realizes, because it's snapping its mouth, that if it grabs its mouth and tries to like open its mouth wide, it does exactly what he wants. King Kong snaps the T-Rex's jaw in front, and it's a little bit bloody as well, which is pre-code, very much pre-code. But snaps the jaw, and all of this is just happening in front of Anne, who is very much helpless. And at this point, for people who don't know the King Kong story, you would think, oh my god, this thing is a brute, a monster. But then not long later, we see that Kong basically treats Anne like how a kid would treat like a hamster. He just treats her like a very small pet that he can keep in his hand, and he's actually just protecting her.
Yeah, and obviously Anne doesn't know that, so she is essentially fulfills the damsel in distress function, and then Jack is like the knight in shining armor, etc. So he's obviously going after her, trying to be as stealthy as possible to not like let Kong see him, because he's instantly dead if Kong gets his hands on him, obviously. But yeah, then the moment where Jack does finally save her, so Kong is having a fight with a pterodactyl, and then once that happens, that gives Jack his opening to go and save Anne. And then once Kong realizes she's gone and he sees them running away, he's absolutely distraught. He's absolutely so like angry, and it's like, because they obviously don't understand that he's actually not trying to be a threat to this person, obviously. But then once they get back to the gate, and then they're obviously trying to barricade the gates back. They're hitting him with spears, and then eventually, because they had brought a bunch of gas bombs on board, and obviously the whole crew are like, what are we going to need gas bombs for? That's literally so dangerous for us to be on a ship for weeks on end with these bleeding gas bombs. But luckily, as from their point of view, luckily they had them on board, and Denham kind of made the right call, because they eventually blow up a few gas bombs and they incapacitate Kong just enough so that they can get him in chains and in all tied up, and then they're going to bring him back to New York and display him. He says Kong, the eighth wonder of the world, so they're going to display him in front of New York as this obviously otherworldly marvel that no one has ever seen anything the likes of before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pacing of like that whole ending, the last 20-25 minutes in New York, is insane. It is so good, so action packed. I absolutely love it as well. Shane, what are your opinions on the characters of Denham, Jack, and Anne?
I think Denham is like clearly, and he probably knows this himself, it's clearly like a piece of shit. Like let's call it space. Like he's
essentially a poacher.
Yeah, like he's unscrupulous. He pulls no punches. He is all for himself. He's all for making a profit, and he doesn't really care kind of what collateral damage lies in his wake. He doesn't care about the people who really die that he's employed, obviously, that Kong has killed. I'm sure it's not the first time he's gone on one of these kind of expeditions, and there's been like obviously carnage left in his wake. Jack, like you said, it's hilarious because he's meant to be like the knight in shining armor, and he does serve that function a little bit because he does try and save Anne on multiple occasions.
So
obviously.
Begrudgingly though, he hates women. He openly hates women.
It's so funny that like you have a misogynist as your protagonist. It's so funny.
Yeah,
such a 1930s thing to do. And Anne, like I said, she's not as fully developed a character, but at least they go to the extent of like showing why she feels the need to go on this trip. She's obviously from a poor background. She needs the money, and then obviously Denham's essentially like exploiting her.
Denham catches her stealing fruit from a fruit vendor and pays the fruit vendor, and then takes her out. To use her for what originally is going to be a movie where she is the damsel in distress with King Kong. But as you said, that totally flips on his head. Once he figures out that King Kong is a giant gorilla, then all of a sudden he wants to make a show in New York about the eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah, so Anne is like maybe not as fully developed a character as certainly Denham, but at least she does like serve proper narrative function where it's like, right, she's clearly the reason that Kong is so like Kong is clearly enamored with her, which obviously like that's your storytelling stakes right there. And then obviously Jack is trying to save him, and then obviously they bring Kong back to New York. But that moment where where Denham reveals Kong to the world. So this is obviously weeks later where Denham and Anne are about where Jack and Anne are about to get married the following day, I think. But
Yeah.
so he essentially wants to trade off their story, like this young couple who found love against all odds, this big creature, etc., etc. But that moment where they reveal Kong, the curtains pull back, and obviously the whole audience are obviously in shock as it would be, but the terror in Kong's eyes, and like you really feel so bad for him at that point because like you said, this obviously film is meant as well to evoke like obviously wildlife who are taking out wildlife who and putting zoos against their kind of their will and are essentially being exploited and abused and stuff. So obviously we're meant to evoke those kind of poor animals as well. But yeah, the terror in his eyes really got a pull on the heartstrings. It's a emotionally hard thing point in the film for sure.
Yeah, early on, and when I say early on, I mean before the film even begins, we kind of are told how important Anne is as a character because we get this Arabian proverb, which says, "And lo, the beast looked upon the face of beauty, and it stayed its hand from killing, and from that day it was as one dead." Basically implying that once that Kong was no longer just fending for himself and was actively trying to protect something, in this case
Yeah,
Anne, obviously mind is in two places, can't just look after himself anymore, ends up in this situation. And yeah, we are now in New York where after some photographers take pictures of Kong and Kong's terrified, the photographers then take pictures of Anne and Jack, the soon to be newlyweds, and Kong takes this that they are then trying to attack Anne, and all of a sudden Kong, I love as well because it's the 30s. It's not like titanium or anything. It's,
yeah,
don't worry, guys. His handcuffs are made of chrome. King Kong yoinks that off as if it was aluminium. Like just no bother to him at all.
yeah,
Off come the restraints, and chaos ensues. Kong bursts out the building, and everything is perfect from here on out. Some of the rear projection is a bit silly. I don't care. I just think the whole ending of this film is literally perfect. Kong bursts out looking for Anne. Meanwhile, on the ground, the fire brigade and the ambulances are like bombing it down the streets trying to get to the scene. Kong is scaling buildings, literally just looking in the windows of this theater to try and find Anne. And every time he gets to a floor and sees a woman, he'll take the woman out. And at one point, he takes a woman out, and it's not Anne, so he just tosses her, and she falls to her
yeah.
death. And at this point, the death toll as a result of Denham's, he will put it down to in search of art because obviously he was making pictures, but no, he's very much monetarily driven. The death toll because of this man is very much spiraling. Kong gets to the floor that Anne and Jack are on, and I love this effect where this giant hand just comes in the window, knocks Jack to the floor, and pulls her out. It's so great. He heads up the building then with Anne as they realize he's gone up the Empire State Building. Chaos is ensuing even more so now, and they realize Cooper's vision. They must call in the planes. We get a monkey on top of the Empire State Building and planes attacking it. And yeah, just like the 2005 version of the film, he is actively trying to protect Anne whilst getting shot. And again, in the same way that you feel bad for Kong when he's unveiled to the people in New York, when he starts getting hit in the chest and
Yeah.
feels his own blood and looks at it and looks terrified, you just feel so bad. And he kind of has one last moment where he sort of plays with Anne, like kind of tickles her or whatever, and then accepts his fate, just gets shot to shit and falls off the building. And again, similar to those lads on that cliff, it's just a very pulled back shot of the Empire State Building and this dummy basically of Kong just falls and just hits every floor on the way down as well. Plummets, hits the ground. Everybody rushes to the scene, and as I said, with the Jack Black line in 2005, when Carl Denham rocks up, and they said that the planes killed him, and Denham says, "Oh no, it wasn't the airplanes; it was Beauty that killed the Beast." That is cinema. That is absolute cinema. Now, in the 2005 one, as far as I'm aware, am I right in saying that Kong's holding on by like a fingertip, and then she like pushes the fingertip and he falls?
I remember seeing that when I was very young, and it's been a long, long time. So to be honest, I can't remember much of it.
I think that's how that one ends. I prefer this, where yes, technically Beauty killed the Beast because Kong was too busy trying to protect Anne to protect himself. It's not that a small woman is actually helping a gigantic gorilla fall off of the Empire State Building. I think that this ending is absolute cinema, absolutely incredible. Denham kind of doesn't really at all accept any sort of error in his ways. He gets away with it, which is not cool, but obviously that is how things were going back then with animal cruelty and zoos and stuff and poachers and everything. They were getting away with it. But yeah, I think of all the acting performances, Robert Armstrong's definitely the best.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
He's got the best character as well, but I think his performance, especially his line delivery for that last line, is definitely the best piece of acting in the entire film.
Yeah, and it sets the stakes, like, because obviously it takes a while for the film to reveal why he really wants to go to Skull Island. But like, he's already such a shady, kind of untrustworthy, slimy kind of character that you obviously instantly not to trust him and not trust his motives, not to trust his reasons for going, really. And you know that he's built up this whole crew of hundreds of guys, and he doesn't care if half of them come back. He really doesn't.
He doesn't even tell them where they're going or for how long.
And like he doesn't care as long as there's enough of them to like get Kong back in. Well, obviously he doesn't really know at the start, but as long as there's enough of them that will help him fulfill whatever his mission happens to be at that point in time, he doesn't really care after that. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, definitely. Obviously the most unlikable character, which is crazy considering how misogynistic Jack is. But
you hate women. I know, but you're different.
But yeah, he's definitely, I think, the most fascinating human character for sure. If there's one thing I would have liked to see, and I can't remember if the remake has this either, but there's one thing that I would have liked to see is that at some point Anne has the realization that Kong isn't actually trying to hurt her. And like
I think that realization does happen in the 2005
right,
one.
Yeah, I can't remember.
And I'm not sure. I can't comment on the 70s one because I haven't seen the 70s one.
Yeah, I've not seen that one either. Like, at some point, it would have been nice for Anne to, and maybe even try to tell Jack or Denham or everyone else, oh no, he actually, because obviously you can't domesticate a fucking a massive beast like this, obviously. Yeah. But at least she could have been. It would have presented more of a moral conundrum then, where it's like, oh, like, maybe actually isn't this murderous beast that we all thought. Maybe he actually does just kind of want to like be kind of left alone. Like they have essentially, they did essentially go into his kingdom, and like obviously, where he was kind of pretty much happy fighting all those dinosaurs and stuff.
He was king.
Yeah, he was king, exactly, and dragged them to obviously to New York and to the human civilization. So they've obviously there's obviously all that going on as well. But yeah, it would have been nice for Anne to have that kind of moment of realization and then see how she kind of reacted off of that then. But yeah, I'm fine with what they did as well. I understand why they did it, and it's still class. It's still class.
Yeah, because they definitely make an effort for the audience to learn this very early on with the sound effects.
Yeah.
Whenever he first picks her up and like kind of tickles her in the score, there's like a They kind of make like almost like a sound effect with the score for every time he tickles her, and it's very like childlike. It's very playful. So the audience know full well, but as you said, I don't think Anne ever really realizes that Kong was not trying to hurt her. But yeah, that is King Kong. Shane, your first time seeing 1933 King Kong. What do you think? Is it any use?
Yeah, it's class. I gave this 4 stars. Yeah, really lived up to my hopes, my expectations. The stop motion effects are very charming. Once you get used to them, they're very charming and very effective. Like they are very effective in kind of portraying the fight sequences. Like you said, they're choreographed really well. Denham is such a slimy villain that you want to see him get his comeuppance. And in fairness, obviously it's pre-code. If this was during the code, it would be interesting to see what would have happened. But obviously it doesn't quite happen in the end. And no, I just had a great time throughout. The New York sequence in particular, once you get to New York, it's just so good. And that it really needs to kind of earn its money and earn its keep at that point, and it really does. So I was happy that I landed where I needed to. So I love this. Really great film.
Yeah, I genuinely think this is one of the best films I've seen from the 1930s. Definitely one of the best films from the 1930s that we've covered on the podcast so far. Not number one though. Number one for me is will always be, but number one for me is definitely still The Invisible Man. But this is possibly my number two film that we've covered from the 1930s so far on the podcast. I absolutely love King Kong. I think it is paced so well. The sets are incredible. The costumes are fantastic. Denham is such a despisable but memorable character, and his arc is fascinating because his arc could have gone multiple ways. He is a movie director to begin with who just seems shady or whatever, and you can give him the benefit of the doubt that he doesn't actually know he doesn't know that Kong is a giant gorilla. All he knows of is that it's this mystical spirit or whatever. But as we come to learn, when the going gets tough, he has no issues. Just everybody grab a gun. You all go in ahead of me, and they all get dispatched of whilst he hides. And from then, he just milks Kong as the cash cow that he is until the death toll that gets too high, and then whenever Kong does die, he actually blames it on Anne, which is kind of funny. Yeah. But yeah, it is hilarious. Jack and Anne's relationship is hilarious and unintentionally so, but that still doesn't actually detract from it actually makes me enjoy this movie even more, how funny their relationship is. I don't care if it's intentional or not. It is so 1930s that it's just a woman on a ship and she's like, oh my god, we're on a magical adventure, this is so amazing, I'm so happy. And then you have this guy who's like, I fucking hate women, and somehow they fall in love. It's so contrived but so silly and so enjoyable. Love it. Yeah, as you said, it is really funny that like a misogynist is our knight in shining armor here. And he, like, the character, even after he saves her, still admits to hating women. He's like, I still hate women, just not you. Like, what an insane character. But it is 1933, we all have to remember. That being said, insane character. I gave this film 4.5 stars. It went up on a rewatch for me. I've seen it a couple of times anyway. This is my favorite viewing of it so far. I definitely want to get this on 4K because I just think that the scenes when they first get to Skull Island with the islanders would look fantastic on 4K because they put so much effort into the village, the costumes, the body paint, the face paint. Everything just looks amazing. And as well, actually, I'd like to shout out Noble Johnson, who played the chief of the Skull Islanders. I think he's got a lot of presence. I didn't want to use the word aura. I think he's got a lot of presence, and he's in the same way that they've come to Kong's island, they've also come to his island. He is the guy who runs this island, and the performance he gives, because obviously he's not speaking English, he's speaking this native language. We never really know what he's saying, but through his performance, we always know what he means. Yeah. And I just think that he has definitely got a really memorable presence that, as I said, I would love to see in 4K. So I will definitely pick this up on 4K at some point. But yeah, King Kong 1933, fantastic film from the 1930s. I would highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. And if you do like the 2005 version, or probably the 1970s version, haven't seen it, but I assume it's good, or Kong Skull Island, which came out and is surprisingly good, go back and watch this, because I am sure that you will enjoy it for what it is. It is fantastic, and yeah, that last act is so good. It is so fast-paced. And yeah, that concludes the first film review of We're Under Attack. Next week, we return to H.G. Wells, the godfather of science fiction, with The War of the Worlds. But in the meantime, Shane, have you seen anything recently that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I have. So I saw Eddington, which is obviously Ari Aster's new film. The only other film of his actually I've seen so far before this was Midsummer, and I kind of think that I feel about this similar to how I feel about Midsummer, which is I really enjoy the artistry and I enjoy the kind of the intention and the creative kind of avenues it goes down. But yeah, maybe I didn't really enjoy it as much as other people. Just as a final kind of formed product, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I think Hereditary is definitely his best movie. It is
Nice.
so good.
Yeah, I keep meaning to check that out. The Life of Chuck is Mike Flanagan's new film. It's fine. I think it's meant to be like kind of self-affirming and like it's kind of meant to evoke like those kind of 80s and 90s really hopeful, life-affirming kind of fantasy, almost fantasy movies. Kind of straddles the line between fantasy and reality. But it's based on a Stephen King short story, I should say as well. It's solid. Like I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say it's amazing. I know it's a limited series, but I do want to mention Say Nothing, which was from last year actually. It's about the Troubles in Northern Ireland and about a couple of the first two women who were admitted to the IRA proper, not just the common kind of wing, if you want to call it that. Yeah, really fascinating stuff. Obviously about the Troubles and about these kind of two real life people. See, it's very good. Angel Face is another Otto Preminger noir. So I think we covered Laura and we covered Where the Sidewalk Ends last year. And this is another one starring Robert Mitchum. Really, really great. Definitely on a par with Laura, I'd say, for sure. Really,
cool.
really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot. Great femme fatale performance in there. Another noir, Force of Evil. It's pretty good too. The Thursday Murder Club is an adaptation of Richard Osman's novel, which I have read. I read the first few of those actually. It's decent, it's fine, it's watchable, but it's also like, if you haven't read the book, you'll probably forget about it straight away. And if you have read the book, there are probably some things that they do, especially towards the end, some like that they kind of diverge from the novel form, which I don't usually mind. Take your creative look and the liberties if you want. But they definitely do take some go down some avenues which it doesn't seem to have gone down too well with fans of the novel. It's fine. It's kind of a British, kind of one of those British cozy comedies, and yeah, you'll know exactly what I mean, I think, when I say that. Detour is of another noir, and it's pretty good. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that a lot. It's only just over an hour, and it's yeah, it's a really kind of brief yet very brisk story, so it goes at like a mile a minute, and it's
a very angry movie.
Very angry, very fast paced. It's a great voiceover narration throughout the whole film. Obviously, it is a noir, so this guy recounting what's happened to him and why he is where he is and the kind of situation he's in, which I won't obviously get into, but it's really really effective. Really enjoyed that. And then I've seen a couple of films that we're going to be covering on the podcast quite soon, so I'll hold off on my thoughts for those. But then finally, after the absolute disaster that was the Rat Pack version of the Ocean's 11, I need to cleanse. I need to just get purged that from my memory. So I decided to revisit the Steven Soderbergh remake, obviously from the 2000s.
Nice.
And it is so good. It's even better than I remembered. I absolutely love this. There is actually a reason for every member of the crew to actually be recruited here. Not just like, oh, they were all in the army together, so fine, we're going to pull off this heist for some reason. Like, they literally target people with specific skill sets because they are exactly the person they need to pull off this insanely ridiculous heist. It's so great. And then on top of that, it's not just a bunch of faceless, nameless casino owners that you only see after the fact. Andy Garcia here is so great as this kind of smooth, yet you can so sinister. You can tell that this guy would fuck you up without a second's thought, and he knows where the bodies are kept because he's put most of them there. It's so great. And then added to the fact then we talked about Danny Ocean's ex-wife in the 1960s version has no reason to be in that film whatsoever except for right, well, we need a woman, we need a female character here, so let's just create one, whatever. Julia Roberts as Tess, Danny's ex-wife, is dating Andy Garcia's character Terry Benedict. And then this is a secret that's actually kind of the main reason, or at least a very big reason, why George Clooney's Danny Ocean actually wants to pull off this heist. He wants to give one over on the guy who stole his wife from him. Like, it's got all this going on. It's such great storytelling stakes. There's actually a reason, like I said, for all of the characters to be in there. They actually all get like a moment to shine, at least one moment to shine, if not more. It's so good. And anyone who wants to watch an Oceans film, stay the hell away from that original. Just watch Soderbergh's remake. Because if we're going to do a remake, this is the way to do it. It's so great. So yeah, that's what I've watched. And yeah, just go watch Ocean's 11 the remake. It's so good.
Class. Yeah, funnily enough, I watched a couple of things somewhat similar to you. I also watched an Otto Preminger film with Robert Mitchum.
Oh, nice.
And it's not very good, believe it or not. I watched River of No Return with Robert Mitchum and Marilyn Monroe, and few films have felt more dated. It is a bad movie. Robert Mitchum's character is disgusting, and we are supposed to like him. We talk about how in this film it's like hilarious and like contrived, but like very 30s, that a misogynist is like the love interest in the knight in shining armor. In this film, it crosses any sort of line that exists by so much. What Robert Mitchum's character does to Marilyn Monroe's character and then is still the love interest is actually disgusting and has aged horribly. I then watched something that hasn't aged horribly, which is Werewolf of London, which is the first Wolfman film technically in Universal. I have that big box set, and this came out in the mid-30s, and some of the effects in this are a lot of fun. It is different, definitely tonally, and with the lore and stuff to the Wolfman film that we've covered on the podcast, which came out later. But it definitely, I wouldn't go as far as to say that it left the blueprint for werewolf films, but it did some things very well, particularly that first scene where he transforms into a werewolf is shot and edited so well. It's seamless. And then I watched a film that absolutely blew me away. I could not get over how great it was, and that is Son of Frankenstein. I'm gonna try my best to get all of the Universal Monster movies watched in time for Halloween and then do a ranking video. And this is without question gonna be in at least the top 5. This is fantastic. It stars Basil Rathbone as who we all know as Sherlock Holmes. He plays the son of Frankenstein, the doctor that is. They also address in the very first scene, because apparently this was happening back then, the Mandela effect, that the monster was called Frankenstein, because he says in a sequence that his surname has been dragged through the mud and tarnished so much that when people say Frankenstein, they think of the monster that his father created and not his father himself. So good. Bela Lugosi is in this and gets one of the best characters Bela Lugosi's ever gotten to play. He gets so much depth and so much screen time as Igor, who is this maniacal, brooding serial killer in the background of all of this, who is basically using Frankenstein's monster as a puppet. And then as well, I have to shout out Lionel Atwill, who has been in a bunch of classic horror films from Michael Curtiz, and he's in future Universal Monster movies, in future Frankenstein films, because his character of Inspector Krogh is so good. He basically he was a child when the first Frankenstein movie happened, and as a result of Frankenstein's monster, he lost his arm as a child and then spent his whole life. His father was in the military and he wanted to be in the military, but he couldn't because he only had one arm and he couldn't get into the military because of it. So he spent his whole life hating the monster and became a policeman. And then obviously the monster goes away at the end of Bride of Frankenstein. But as soon as there's rumors that the monster has come back, all of a sudden he just gets like a whole new lease of life, because his lifelong mission, which he didn't realize up until this point, was to catch the monster. It is so good. The set design is amazing. And dare I say, this movie has maybe the best lightning a movie has ever had. The lightning in this movie is unbelievable. It is so cool. And obviously, shout out to Karloff, who plays the creature for one final time, who said that this was. He always saw Frankenstein as a trilogy, and he was happy. Like basically all three Frankenstein films that he's in are all amazing. Uh, I then saw a Stephen King adaptation. I finally got around to seeing The Monkey. Was not expecting this to be what it was. Yeah, crazy film. I think sometimes it leans into comedy. Yes, if you haven't seen it, I'm saying comedy so much that it actually comes across as a parody film. But at other points, it is enjoyable. I think Theo James gets to do a lot more than Theo James normally gets to do in a film, so good for him. I'm sure this was a lot of fun for him, but the kills are pretty good. But it's by no means one of the most memorable horror films I've seen recently. I then, in preparation for War of the Worlds next week, I got the Paramount 4K, which has War of the Worlds, and it has a what would you say, like a second feature or a B movie that comes with it, so that you can watch War of the Worlds and the B movie that would have often been shown in cinemas with it, which was When Worlds Collide, which was also produced by George Pal, who produced War of the Worlds. And to be honest, dare I say, it is on a fairly similar par to War of the Worlds. I think where War of the Worlds, not to get too into it because we're covering it next week, but where War of the Worlds for me kind of leans on its effects, which I quite enjoyed, and the characters are pretty forgettable. With When Worlds Collide, it's again also very a lot of very strong religious undertones. With When Worlds Collide, it's very much a Noah's Ark film, but set in 50s sci-fi. Some of the characters are actually quite memorable, and Barbara Rush has a genuinely good performance, which a lot of those like classic 50s sci-fi films, you're either watching it and you see a cast of people who you will never see again, or you get the odd one where you get a young Steve McQueen or a young Barbara Rush who puts in a great performance, and all of a sudden their career ends up going somewhere. I then, last but not least, watched The Invisible Man Returns, the sequel to probably my favorite Universal Monster movie. And in this one, Vincent Price plays the Invisible Man in an early role in Vincent Price's career. And we get very, very little of him on screen. It's 90% of his performance is voice acting. The film goes in a pretty interesting direction. To be honest, I think I might have just been a bit tired when I watched it, because it's by no means my favorite film, and it's not a patch on the original, but I do find it fascinating that it is kind of a worthy sequel just because it goes in a tonally totally different route to the original. It is very much a sequel to the original. We follow the brother of the Invisible Man in the last one, who is also a scientist, but comes up with the serum to basically get his friend, who has wrongfully been accused of murder, out of prison. But as a result, same thing that happened in the original Invisible Man, it drives him crazy, and then he ends up going on a much smaller, much more low-key spree. But his spree is also him trying to figure out who is the murderer in the case that he was accused of murder, because obviously all signs point to him being framed by someone, so it must be someone who he knows. So it's part revenge thriller, part Universal Monster movie, and it's got Vincent Price. So I don't know why I didn't think this is like really good, but I still very much enjoyed it. It's an enjoyable sequel, but it's nothing along the lines of Bride of Frankenstein or Son of Frankenstein. Like, it's not a sequel that's gonna blow you away. But I did think it was a very enjoyable Universal Monster movie. And yeah, that's everything that I've watched recently. But yeah, next week, The War of the Worlds, not to be confused with War of the Worlds, starring the legendary Ice Cube, or Tom Cruise, depending on which one you prefer. Probably Tom Cruise. Yeah, aliens are invading. We are under attack. It's the War of the Worlds. Next week on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. But this week we covered the 1933 masterpiece, in my opinion, King Kong. What an unbelievably fun time at the cinemas this movie is. And I hope you all go and watch it. But yeah, thank you very much. I've been Harry Bailey.
I've been Shane Boy.
And we will see you all next week for H.G. Wells' return to the podcast, kind of, The War of the Worlds. Goodbye.